Choosing the role of RockerBoy, you have the charismatic leadership ability. This ability allows you to sway crowds equal to your level squared times 200, for a minimum of 200 people and a maximum of 20,000. You can control, incite, and charm people through the performance skill. Now that's very specific wording, through the performance skill. The group can easily become persuaded to act on his suggestions. I want to get this out of the way, the wording is very specific because I think there was an intent on how to play a RockerBoy in the original Inception, especially looking at Never Fade Away, section 13. So, we have a clear set of challenges, approximately 3. The amount of people you can influence at any one time, no role required it seems, it's just a maximum cap on how many people at a time you can influence. Then, you must use your performance skill to coax the crowd, whether that be by speech, or by instrument, or by dance. Whatever your special sauce is as a RockerBoy is how you're going to influence the crowd enough to be able to persuade them to do something. And finally, like I said, if successful, if all passes are successful, you did the performance check, you gathered the crowd, it should be an easy persuasion check, so a difficulty 10 persuasion check. Could possibly be interpreted as persuasion, oratory, leadership, social. The wording is unclear, but the intent is very clear. To finally get that amount of people to do what the RockerBoy wants. It's also important to note that this special ability can only work on a minimum number of 10 people, considering it's meant to be a crowd ability. But so if you look at the section 13 part of the book, Never Fade Away, Johnny Silverhand has to do a bunch of setup before he can start rocking out and then telling the crowd to storm Arasaka Tower. So to recap, the flow would go something like this. First, you must find or gather a crowd of people. This can be done by drumming up the crowd yourself, going to where a crowd already exists, like a concert or dance club, maybe putting in some phone calls with some agents who can manage to find a bunch of people to do a party with. But essentially, first you have to do the build-up of getting that crowd. Once that's successful, then you just have to do a performance check. The difficulty should be set by whatever the RockerBoy wants the crowd to do. So if he simply wants the crowd to dance around and have a good time, the check should be somewhere between 15 to 20. Something that's a little difficult but manageable. If he wants the crowd to be crazy rioters that will disrupt the peace and flip over cars and stuff, it should probably be higher, maybe somewhere above 20, but maybe not 30 because it's not that crazy. A lot of people are disgruntled in the Cyberpunk setting, so it wouldn't be unreasonable that some people are pissed off and want to do something about it. And then for absolutely ludicrous cult-like things, such as sacrificing yourself by throwing yourself off a building or cliffside, or having the whole crowd pull out guns and shooting themselves, that should be a level 30 difficulty, basically impossible. You need to get a crit in order for that to happen, otherwise the crowd's just going to disagree with you and maybe even be mad at you for suggesting to kill themselves. But for those referees that are confused on how to use this ability, this is sort of what you have to kind of do. You have to see what exactly the demands of the RockerBoy are, and if the crowd would be willing to go along with something like that. So now we know what the difficulty is. Now the RockerBoy has to use some kind of performance in order to persuade the crowd or coax the crowd easy enough so that they can easily be persuaded to do whatever it is the RockerBoy wants. And the way that I've interpreted this is that the typical skills you would use as a RockerBoy to get the crowd to do these things would be perform, easy, right? You perform whatever it is you're doing, whatever that skill specifically means. It's interesting because then there's also the ability play instrument, right? You would expect perform would cover play instrument, but based on the actual rules of the system, playing instrument is a completely different skill. So you could have a 10 in perform, which means you're a legend, but somehow have a 0 in play instrument. So that would mean, I guess, that you're a bit of a poser who's pretending to play the instrument when really it's being played for you. It's all smoke and mirrors. The other typical skills would be leadership, easy, right? You're a politician, or oratory, which are two of basically the same thing. Oratory is more specialized towards talking to large crowds. Leadership, I imagine, if you look back in the skills, would be being a leader of a band or maybe like a unit, something like that. Maybe a little more personal rather than a huge crowd of people. But I think either of those skills can work, leadership or oratory. The non-typical skills, however, would be a lot more interesting, and you would probably need to bargain with your referee a lot more, but there could be an argument made for them. So, like intimidation, you intimidate the crowd to do what you want. You could probably play some sort of bad boy persona. Maybe you could use social, which is more one-on-one with people, the social skill. But it could be something like you're trying to portray a more personal touch to your, persona that you're projecting onto the crowd. And then finally, seduction. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have fallen for somebody they find absolutely attractive and will do anything for that person given the word from them. So those are non-typical skills you would use for this perform step of RockerBoy, and I think they're all valid given some specific context. And then finally, there's the last step of the RockerBoy special ability charismatic leadership, the persuade step. It could be interpreted that there's not actually a step here, but I decided that the wording was very specific, so this is my interpretation of it. I would suggest make a persuasion skill check, and it becomes easier based on the level of success from the previous performance check. So let's just say that the performance check needed for the previous was 20. Well, if you get 20 or higher, then great. Your persuasion check gets reduced down to the easiest possible, a 10. But let's just say your performance didn't meet the actual skill check. Let's just say it got to 15. I would say take the actual difficulty value, subtract it by however much was missed actually getting there, so 20 minus 15, 5, and then add that to the difficulty of the persuasion check that you now have to make in order to get the crowd to do what you want. So if the crowd was asked to storm some sort of corporate tower, and you only got a 15 for a difficulty 20 check, that doesn't mean you failed it. That just means now it's going to be harder for you to finally make the plea or the ask towards the crowd to actually go and risk their lives for the greater good of combating this corporation. And that's pretty much it. That's my interpretation on how to play a RockerBoy. I maybe made it a little more complicated than it was probably intended, but it pretty much works like that. Gather a crowd up, be a rock star, and then the crowd will do your bidding. It's very, very straightforward and simple. So for any would-be RockerBoys out there, I hope you found this useful or at least insightful. You don't have to use the rules exactly as I laid them out. This is more of a suggestion. A lot of the rules of this book are very up to interpretation. Always check in with your referee to see what he considers, or she, what they consider. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you play a RockerBoy. So until next time.